Hello everyone, and welcome to a special video today on Timeless, where I am going to be reading aloud and answering some of the questions that I get from you viewers. I've publicized this on the show a few times, but just as a reminder, you can email me at julie@hartman.com. I really love hearing from you. It's my favorite part of my job, to hear what you like, to hear what maybe you didn't like, and also to answer whatever questions you have. I picked 4 today. There are many more that I could have chosen, but I picked 4 that I see as largely the most common questions that I get, or in a similar vein of a lot of the typical questions that I get, and also kind of deal with a broad range of subjects. I'm going to keep up this segment, this mailbag segment. So again, if you want to ask me a question and I can read it aloud on air, write me an email. If you don't want me to say your name, obviously I will respect that, but throw in what city you're from. I love learning stuff like that. So let's start with this first question. I'm keeping this individual's name anonymous. He wrote to me and said, I am interested in learning more about your story and what you're hoping to accomplish by voicing your opinions publicly. I really liked that question because, as many of you know, I am a big fan of the wisdom of Niccolo Machiavelli, who was a, 16th century I think that he was 16th century Italian writer. And one of the things that Machiavelli says that really resonates with me is that a nation has to have refoundings. In other words, a nation has to remind its people of why the nation exists, why the nation is special, and what values this country embodies and hopes to propagate. I loved that because I look at the United States and I see that we're not doing that right now as a nation. We're not teaching people what is so good and noble and important about this country. And so to take this kind of macro insight of Machiavelli with regard to nations, I also think this applies to individual people. You need to, for yourself, every few weeks or few months, kind of remind yourself of why you are doing what you're doing. Why are you in this job? Why are you in this relationship? What are some goals you have? Who do you hope to be as a person? As corny as it sounds, like when you die, what do you want people to write about you in your obituary? And certainly when you have a talk show like I do, it's very important to have those refoundings and kind of reestablish, why is it, apropos of this anonymous person, why is it that I am voicing my opinions publicly? What do I hope to accomplish? The simple answer is that I want to destigmatize common sense opinions. That's really kind of it. I remember when I was in college during that terrible summer of COVID lockdowns and the Black Lives Matter riots, I was a liberal and I became acquainted with some conservative thinkers and conservative thought. And I remember how powerful it was for me to see people like Dennis Prager, Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, literally insert any name of a conservative commentator. I remember how empowering, as corny as it sounds, it was to me to see those individuals saying all of the things that I was thinking, but didn't feel like I was in a position to say. I want to provide that for other people. I was speaking with a pretty prominent conservative commentator the other day, and we were talking about social media posts. And I said to her, sometimes on social media, when I say something, I feel like it's really obvious. Like Black Lives Matter as an organization has done nothing to help Black people. I feel like that's a really obvious thing to say. And sometimes I don't put out a post saying that because I just think it's totally widespread and understood. And she had a really good response to me, which was, first of all, no, it's not really that widespread. It's important to say. And number 2, it's not so much that you always need to be saying something novel. It's just important for other people to see someone saying it. That is totally true. The more that people come out and destigmatize common sense opinions, say the things that the vast majority of this country believes and thinks, I think that we will be inching closer to a better future. Really, that's what I want to do. Also, you know that part of this show, in addition to news and political commentary, also deals with non-political subjects. That was really, really important to me when I was thinking about what I wanted this show to be. I've done shows on Timeless over the past 10 months on flags, on owls, on the origin and development of language. I had a graphologist who's a handwriting analysis expert on the show, and I gave him Sean, my producer's handwriting, and my handwriting, and Hitler's handwriting, and some other random samples, and said, analyze it. I've done shows on weddings. I've done shows on funerals. I mean, insert whatever else. I've done, obviously, histories of various countries, shows on that. I've done shows on fashion. I mean, you name it, music, art, architecture. And it's because I think that we as Americans have become too political as creatures. On the one hand, I want to destigmatize common sense political opinions. But on the other hand, I want us to be able to relate to one another and talk about things that don't have to do with politics, because life is really fun and really interesting. There's an endless array of topics and subjects that all of us, I think, would be so interested to know about, but we don't realize that they're right there in front of us. I hope to bring those things to you. So that's question numero uno from Mr. Anonymous. Question number 2 is from Michael. I don't know where Michael is from. I would love to know where Michael is from. Stuff like that is endlessly fascinating to me. I was looking at my YouTube things the other day, and I saw that we had listeners in Sweden. Who knew? That's pretty cool. Michael asks me, what 5 books would you recommend to an adult who doesn't have a love of books and whose life is not centered on things that matter? And then he said, same question, but for a young woman and girl. I compiled these questions, and I didn't come up with pre-rehearsed answers. I really just obviously wanted this to be spontaneous. By the way, nothing I ever do is rehearsed. It's always totally spontaneous on the air, as you can probably tell when I slip up sometimes. But this is the moment where I wish I had sort of prepped an answer. It's difficult to come up with these titles on the spot. But this is interesting because Michael's saying, what would you recommend to an adult who doesn't have a love of books and whose life is not centered on things that matter? So that kind of narrows it down to values-based books, I think. Because if you're trying to get someone to focus on things that matter in life, probably are not going to recommend them Greg Melville's book, Over My Dead Body, which, by the way, is a great book, and I did a show on it. Another non-political thing I did a show on, burial practices and different cemeteries around the country. Greg Melville, Over My Dead Body, great book. But these books that he's asking for, I think, pertain to values. Look, I know this is a predictable answer because I do a show with Dennis Prager and I love Dennis Prager. But there is a reason why I wrote an email to this man. There is a reason why he influenced me. And it's because his insights are spectacular. So I'm going to recommend Still the Best Hope, a Dennis Prager book, which is about the American value system, the American Trinity, e pluribus unum, which means out of many one, liberty, and in God we trust. He explains why those are such important American values, why those values have contributed to our success as a nation. And I think, even if he doesn't explain this explicitly, he kind of gives you the sense that you should adopt those values in your own life, in addition to kind of promulgating them as an American. I try to adopt the e pluribus unum mentality in my own life, where there are many different people with whom I'm acquainted, different backgrounds, different genders, different races, but I don't see them for those immutable characteristic division. I see them as one, and I try to be a unifier of those people. In God we trust. I think that's also a great thing to adopt, not only as a country, but as a person, to put a morally judging God in the center of your life and trying to figure out what that morally judging God would want you to do and how you can behave accordingly. So that's a great book to really make you understand what it means to be an American and why you should be so proud to be an American. Another Dennis Prager book, I'm sorry, I know it's predictable, but I love his work, is Genesis, his first Torah commentary. That lays the groundwork, I think, for your moral foundation, what your moral foundation ought to be as a person. And what I love about that book is that in the introduction, Dennis says, and this is what made me trust him when I was a lib trying to open my mind up and read a conservative book. He said it in the introduction, my intention with this book is not to make you Jewish. It's not to make you Christian. It's not even necessarily to make you religious. It's to try to impart to you that these values and stories in the Bible are worth your time of learning. And you should try to be an ethical monotheist in the sense that you behave in your ethics as the monotheistic God would want you to behave, regardless if you even believe in that monotheistic God. In other words, this book is basically like a moral roadmap for you that you ought to just consider and know about. That was so disarming as an introduction. And I really recommend this book to other people, especially if you're saying this person's life is not centered on things that matter. That book is not a proselytizing book. It's not going to like shove all of these values or religious diktats down that person's throat. It's a really nice, good introduction to just basic morality. Oh gosh, I mean, there are so many more books. I love Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton. It's a defense of Christianity, but honestly, I think he says the word God in the book like maybe once or twice. It's really just a fantastic read about life in general, and it makes you feel an excitement about life and all of its opportunities. I would recommend that. I would recommend a book, oh gosh, it's called I'm going to actually get it and put it in the description. It's a book by a Muslim woman who argues that liberals in the United States are actually doing a disservice to Muslim women by talking about Islamophobia and saying, oh, we shouldn't criticize the hijab. We shouldn't criticize, this culture for having different views on women. That book is really good because even though it's on that one particular subject of Islam, it's a great argument as to why it may seem cool to adopt certain woke ideas, but in practice, those ideas actually harm people. And you shouldn't just apply a moral relativism to a regime because they are, at least in the United States, a religious minority. That is not cool to do. So that is a book. Again, I'll put that in the description. I'm sorry I can't remember the name, but it shows you. I didn't prep this. Totally spur of the moment. And then same question, but for a young woman and girl. I mean, I would totally recommend The Scarlet Letter or Jane Eyre because I think those are like great fiction books that also impart good moral lessons. But frankly, for a young girl, those books I think are too kind of advanced to read. I remember reading Jane Eyre in 8th grade and then Scarlet Letter in 9th grade, and I hated both of them because you're just too young. You don't understand a lot of the themes that they're talking about because you just haven't lived enough life yet to really get it. So I would recommend those, but I would maybe kick it up to age 18 or 19 or 20. But as far as another book for a young woman and girl who needs kind of or could benefit from a values reset, again, I really think it would be that Islam book. Very, very powerful. Next question. It's from a woman. I have her name, but she's talking about her boyfriend. So I'm going to disguise it a little bit for the sake of this woman, just in case her boyfriend is watching Timeless. I don't know if her boyfriend's watching, but just in case he is. Let's call this woman Felicia. It's the first thing that came to my mind, Felicia. Here's what Felicia says, quote unquote Felicia. Sometimes I don't feel like my boyfriend and I are on the same level of spiritual and intellectual depth, but he's a good man who has similar values to me. Oh my gosh, I can relate to this. I've gone on dates with people where I have this exact thing. I'm a reader, and I love a deep conversation about religion, history, and life's questions. Same, friend. If I won't be able to find this in my current relationship, should I be seeking someone I feel is more on my level? Love you and your show. I'm also a history World War II nut and would love any book recommendations on the subject. Thanks. Okay, let's start with the easy one. Book recommendations. Killing the SS by Bill O'Reilly and Eric Larson's In the Garden of the Beasts, if you're a big World War II fan. Killing the SS by Bill O'Reilly follows all of these Nazis who escaped Europe after the war in 1945, and they went to South America and took on new names and adopted new identities, even though they were these homicidal freak shows and deserved to be in prison and executed, but they went to South America. And Bill O'Reilly's book chronicles how the Israeli government, even though Israel was only like 13 years old as a nation, sent Mossad, essentially its CIA, into South America to kidnap and bring back to Israel some of those Nazis and put them on trial. Riveting book, something everyone should know. But let's go back to this boyfriend issue. Again, the question is, if I can't find this, i.e. a kind of spiritual and intellectual depth in my current relationship, should I be seeking someone I feel is more on my level? This is a really difficult one because I believe that everyone in life is a package. You're never going to get the perfect person, whether it's boyfriend, husband, friend, kids. I'm sure my parents look at me sometimes and are like, I would tweak some things about her. She's not the perfect kid I would want. The point is we have to settle in some ways. But this subject, I think, is really important. You need to have a certain spiritual and intellectual depth with the person that you are with. It seems like this woman, if she is writing to me, may have more of a deficit of that than she is letting on. I mean, she said, if I won't be able to find this in my current relationship. She may have it, but it sort of seems like she's reaching out to me because she's feeling a bit like she doesn't have it. Another good book recommendation is Megyn Kelly's Settle for More. I would recommend that book to you, Felicia, which I know is not your name. In the realm of relationships, yes, you need to be tempered and realize that you're never going to get the perfect person. But in this category, I think it's really important to really, really find someone who is on your spiritual and intellectual level. Why? Because it's a long life. That is the most important thing that is going to sustain you. You're going to get old. He's going to get old. Your beauty is going to fade. You may lose his job. He may lose his job. You know, there are going to be all of these kind of external things that are going to happen that may seem important now if the guy's attractive, the guy's successful, but that may all fade. And what is left when that all fades? It really has to be that intellectual, spiritual tie that you have to one another. That will inform also how you raise your kids, how you navigate through life's most important moments. That is the most important thing. So if you, Felicia, are feeling a deficit, I would say consider perhaps moving on from that relationship. But assess if this is something that maybe you can fix by recommending him some books, by sort of maybe helping him, introducing him to certain ideas or certain, if you want to go to church together, figure out if this is something maybe you can work on. But if not, settle for more, as Megyn Kelly would say. And then finally, Charlie. I really, really love this question because it's something I actually get a lot. Charlie says that, quote, I've managed to find different people in my life who check different boxes, intellectual, emotional, etc. More than anything else, I value open-mindedness. It's unfortunate just how hard this is to find nowadays. Do you think authenticity is always the right answer? It seems like it should be, but at the same time, I'm not trying to lose friends or professional opportunities. So to synopsize what I think is going on here and what I know is going on from the greater context of the email is that this person is saying that he has a lot of good people in his life that check different boxes, but that he can't always be open with those individuals about his political beliefs mainly because he doesn't want to lose them. He doesn't want to lose professional opportunities. And his question is authenticity always the answer? Whew. Yes, authenticity is always the answer. But I think you also need to be strategic with that authenticity. Allow me to explain. You shouldn't go into your office. If you voted for Trump, you probably shouldn't go into your workplace with a big MAGA hat and a big MAGA sweatshirt. A, because regardless of whoever you voted for, I think that that's just inappropriate in a work setting. But B, you don't want to put yourself in a position of maybe jeopardizing your job or your relationships, okay? So as much as I'd love to say, yes, totally authenticity is 100% the answer, there are times when you need to be judicious and perhaps concealing some things that you did, some people you voted for may be the most kind of rational course of action. I wish things were different, but the harsh reality is that a lot of people in this country are not as lucky as I am. I get paid to espouse my values. I get paid to talk about who I voted for, what I believe, what I think. A lot of people, if they did that, they would be without a job. So I understand that that is a real thing. People need to put food on the table for themselves, for their families, which is why I'm advocating for just exercising a bit of caution and discretion. However, I do think authenticity is the answer. If someone asks you who you voted for, again, don't come into the office wearing a MAGA hat, but if someone asks you who you voted for, I would be honest with that person. Because as we started this conversation, people in this country need to be more open about things that many people do and many people believe. Half the country voted for Trump. If you voted for Trump, you shouldn't be ashamed of yourself. Look, maybe you change your mind. Maybe there are parts of Trump that are not great, but half the country did it. Is 50% of the country these racist white supremacists? Of course not. It's absurd. And we need people to feel more comfortable saying that they support this person, to use an example. So I would say be authentic and answer truthfully if that person asks you. And just broadly in your life, I do think that in every relationship, you should try to be who you are and not hide things that are not worth hiding. Because once you start down the road of being disingenuous, there's kind of no end to it. And you sort of become that disingenuous person because it becomes more difficult to in your mind figure out, okay, what is the act and what is the real me? The more that you indulge the act, the more you become the act. So the modus operandi, I think, of being authentic is just the best for you and for your soul and for your truthfulness as a person. And also it may eliminate some people from your life. I know this very well. I've had a lot of people eliminated from my life because of my career choices and my political choices. But I think it will attract the right people. And I have also seen that. And that is a really, really good trade-off despite having some difficulty and sadness wrapped up in it. Those are the 4 questions, my friends. Anonymous, Michael, Felicia, and Charlie, thank you for writing in. And again, any of you can write in. I will answer any question. I will read them on the air. You let me know what details you want concealed. I'll exercise caution anyway, as I did today. Julie at julie-hartman.com. Thanks for watching. See you soon.